Look ahead, the crowd is moving, and the jam is moving. Look ahead, the crowd is moving, and the jam is moving. Look ahead, the crowd is moving, and the jam is moving. Look ahead, the crowd is moving, and the jam is moving. Look ahead, the crowd is yo, pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping, and the jam is pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor. See, cause that's where the party's at, and you'll find out when you do that. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. 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 Yo, pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping, and the jam is pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor. See, cause that's where the party's at, and you'll find out when you do that. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. 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 Yo. Yo, pump up the jam, pump it up, pump it up. Yo, pump up the jam, pump it up, pump it up. Yo, pump up the jam, pump it up, pump it up. Yo, pump up the jam, pump it, pump it, pump it, pump it. Yo. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. Oh, I'm glad to say, get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. 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 Yo, pump up the jam, pump up the jam, pump up the jam, pump it up, pump it, pump it, pump it, pump up the jam, pump it up, pump it, pump it, pump it, pump up the jam, pump it, pump it, pump it, pump it, pump.
What is up, party people of the SFL? What's going on this Tuesday night, everybody? What's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome to episode 28 of Axis Live. I am your host, Dave Axis. Let me know if you can hear me okay in the chat. I can tell you guys could hear the music. You were pumping up the jam. I heard all of it. I saw all of it. I am an observer. What can I say? What a week 10 we just witnessed this weekend. We had several close games. I'm going to pull the schedule up for you guys while I talk about this real quick. We had several close games. We had a couple heartbreakers, upsets. We had near upsets. We had games going down to the wire. I mean, week 10 did not disappoint at all. Thank you, Lisa, for letting me know you can hear me. I appreciate that. You too, Bob, Bridge City Bird, all of you guys. I'm going to get to the chat in a minute. Here's the thing, though. We have another bomb diggity panel tonight to break all those games down for you, to break down the entire week 10. And we're going to get to them in a moment. But I think right now, I'm going to go to the chat early tonight. Let's see who's in the show chat real quick. Pink Lisa's here, of course. Bob Funk, Juicy, Monica Naka, Art Vandalay, Amy, Hugo. Good to see everybody in there. Mighty Joe Young. Mighty good to see you. Ray Ray, thanks for coming in. Bridge City Bird, not sure who you are. Your name looks kind of new to me, but if you've been here before, remind me who you are. Wink, of course. I hope he's in there. Who else we got? Eagles in the house. Good. Charles just popped in. I don't know who is that. I don't know who that is. Bayou City Chef. We'll have to see. Dwayne just popped in. AJ Levy's in the house. I think I said Charles already. So it looks like people still creeping in a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into me introducing tonight's panel. Oh, Bridge City Bird is Brett Killian. Okay, from Vancouver. Good to have you, buddy. Thanks for coming and listening to the show. Oh, and Mike St. Green. That's right. I knew that. Sorry about that, bro. So many names in this old head of mine. Sometimes I forget who's who. So thanks for throwing it out there. And it's just Juice. I don't know, bro. You got two eyes. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Juicy. I don't know. That's how I was. It just kind of threw me off. I don't know what to tell you. All right. Let's introduce tonight's panel. First and foremost, a show regular from Sip Scouts, Inc., the director of social media and free safety for my personal, beloved, glorious Lone Star Glory. Thomas Smith is back with us. Thomas, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing tonight, Dave?
I'm doing outstanding, bro. Another show regular with Epic Esports and the host of Coach's Corner, as well as the offensive coordinator, linebacker, and Bash brother, also from my beloved, glorious Lone Star Glory. Coach Craven is with us. Coach, what's going on?
Hi, I'm just here so I won't get traded.
Well, you know what? We still got a couple weeks to talk about that. Maybe a few more weeks. Hopefully several more weeks if we can go deep into the playoffs. We'll see.
Yes, sir.
Also with us tonight, he hasn't been with us for a few weeks, but he's back. Tight end from the London Knights. He's also a color commentator for the SFL's broadcast team. Benji Matson's back with us. Benji, what's going on?
Good evening, friends.
Wow, that sounded almost as good as Charles last week when he was like, "What's up, party people?" You and him should get together and party till like 6:30.
We party all the time.
Eddie Murphy. Could that be Thursday's song? Party all the time, Eddie Murphy. It's not beneath me to do that. Thanks, Benji. Appreciate that. Also tonight, our special guest for this show, free safety and director of football operations for the currently number 2 seeded Louisiana Revolution. Jeff Melanishin is in the house. Ooh, I got it that time, Jeff, I think.
Yeah, you did. I don't know how I can top Benji and his intro with his "What is up, party people?"
I don't know why we all talk like Charles.
Dude's coming in like all monotone, but what's going on, everybody?
Apparently, he wasn't listening to the 4 minutes of music you guys were talking about, I guess.
Yeah, I mean 4 minutes of freaking.
Oh, dude, we were partying. It's that's what sucks about being on the show. Sometimes you guys miss out on the party. The chat's going, the music's bumping, people are loving it, and you guys are just sitting there in the green room all quiet, talking amongst yourselves. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. All right, let's get this party started. First game on the docket this weekend. As I try to pull them up here, hold on. We've got Let me see. Game 1. There we go. All right. First game, right out the gate, Saturday afternoon, Las Vegas at Atlanta. I think a lot of people thought Atlanta would, take care of home field. We know about Las Vegas on the road with their rushing woes, Thomas, and how they play much better at home versus the road. Tell me about this game.
That's exactly what it came down to, Dave, was the rushing woes there. Obviously, Vegas has been a better team at home than on the road this year. And then just seeing them having that trouble running the ball again was what really did them in. BDG Hollywood came out, had a great game, rushing for 170 yards. Everybody's been wondering when we were going to see some big games from BDG. And he's coming on when it really matters, when they're making that playoff push. BDG had a great game. On the other side, Scott Johnson managed to put together 39 total yards. Most of it was receiving, but he had a rough game on the ground. The Vegas offense altogether just really couldn't get a solid attack going. Our buddy Garrison Blue, Frank Franchise Wade, had 12 receptions for 68 yards for Vegas, so he had a pretty good game going there, albeit that they were mostly short receptions. But the Vegas offense just couldn't really stay consistent. For Atlanta, it was mostly on BDG's legs that they had that offense going. Dynasty still played pretty well, throwing for 206 yards and a touchdown, but the offense mostly ran through BDG. There were a couple defensive stalwarts in this game for sure. Moose Papano, safety for Atlanta, had 2 interceptions for 130 return yards, including a 101-yard interception return touchdown. And then one of the league leaders in sacks, Rhett Sawyer, threw in another 2 sacks in this game. So overall, it was there were some good performances, but it was pretty much dominated by Atlanta.
Yeah, I meant to preface this before we got started, but you're going to see Jack's Data actually had a really great weekend themselves, as this game, the final score was 37-20, Atlanta for 57 points. Jack's Data had the over-under at 55.5. That was really close. They had Atlanta favored by 6.5. They definitely covered the spread. And then good old Who You Got? SFL Nation, we took Atlanta 127-45, so we are 1-0 to start the weekend. Moving on to game 2 on Saturday, the 5 o'clock game, Mexico City at Tulsa. You know, it's funny, we talked about Tulsa being favored in this game, and I think some people were questioning it, but I got to tell you, Coach, Tulsa almost won this game.
Yeah, they did. And at first blush, you look at the yardage, it's pretty close. Mexico City did have 2-1 advantage, over 2-1 advantage in running the ball, and that ultimately made a big difference for them. One thing of note, though, is that Tulsa offensively wasn't quite as good as you might think. One of their touchdowns came on a pick six. Matt Wilson started kind of slow, a little bit shaky, and then he turned it around like a Hall of Famer does when it was time to do that. Time of possession was really close, as you might expect, because they threw the ball more and didn't run as successfully. It went for Mexico City. 107 total yards rushing, which isn't eye-opening, but it was pretty well balanced between Phoenix Jones with 54 and Laura Hall with 58. However, Phoenix did it on 9 carries and Laura did it on 23. So, maybe that should have been flip-flopped a little bit to help them out a little bit. 5 sacks for Tulsa, 3 of them for Chris Andrews all by himself. But this was that late third, fourth quarter just magic from Mexico City that turned this thing around and they won the game. And it ultimately was one of the more exciting games to watch all weekend.
Yeah, it definitely was. I actually thought Tulsa was going to pull it out. Jack's Data, like I mentioned, had Tulsa favored by 3. They had an over-under of 51.5 with 47 points scored in this game. So again, they almost nailed it. And we go 2-0 out the gate, SFL Nation, in the Who You Got. We took Mexico City 146-30, although our Who You Got was definitely not nearly as close as the game was. Moving on to game 3, the first of the night games, Fort Worth at Louisiana. We said Sioux Falls and Baltimore this week was going to be the game of the week, and it probably was. But Benji, man, this game was right there with it. What a game this was.
Yeah, this one was awesome to watch. Definitely a game of the week candidate. The rumors of Fort Worth's demise seem to have been greatly exaggerated. They came to play on the road and had a tremendous game. Right off the bat, they got out of the gates fast, 14-zip on Louisiana. Louisiana makes a bit of a pushback. Let's see, 17-14 at the halftime. Jason Williams ran well. I think in the first half, he had 115 yards already and his 2 scores. So Fort Worth got out early, but Louisiana didn't panic. They kept handing the ball off. I think Reggie Streeter still had 30 carries on the day, so even though they didn't get behind, they didn't abandon the run. Made it close. And that second half was just action-packed. Scoring started out. Louisiana, a few punts back and forth. Louisiana, nice drive, and Reggie ran it in from about 10 yards out to make it 21-17 and take the lead. And there was a big momentum, a big part in this game right here. Fort Worth gets back on the field. Louisiana shuts them down and forces the punt. But on that punt, Louisiana muffs it. It is recovered by Fort Worth towards the end of the third quarter. They have a short field. They drive down a nice 5-yard toss to Stephen Hacker for the touchdown, puts Fort Worth back up 24-21. That was a really key play there in the second half, just when Louisiana had all that momentum back, and that punt was really costly. Louisiana, let's see, there's an exchange of possession there. Louisiana got the ball back with 4 minutes to go, then a classic drive, takes it down. Calm under pressure was Captain Pickler and his team. Touchdown pass on the goal line to go up 28-24. Ball back to Fort Worth with a minute and 20 seconds left. And then Xander Gold and his crew from the 22-yard line, when you need to have the biggest drive perhaps of the season, they deliver. And he leads the squad down the field. 8 of 13 on the final drive was Xander Gold, 78 yards within a minute and 20 seconds. They had their timeouts on the board, but it was a fantastic drive. If you didn't see it, it was a thing of beauty. It is worth going and watch. The Cowboy was big on that drive. Stephen Hacker was huge on a couple plays, but Xander Gold was just dropping dimes on that drive, and it was a nail-biter. And then, of course, 4th and goal from the 2-yard line, the almost last play of the game, 7 seconds left to go. And sure enough, Xander Gold delivers the touchdown pass to the Cowboy. It was quite the game. So it's out there to rewatch if you haven't seen it. It is primetime entertainment.
Yeah, especially the end of that game. I was completely stressed out because I was down to the final 10 entries in the survivor pool, and I had Louisiana. And I was, when they took the lead late in the fourth, I was like, there's too much time on the clock. And Xander Gold, like you said, from the 22-yard line, they came down and took care of business and knocked me out of survivor pool. So now I got some bones to pick with Xander Gold and Robert Garrett Jr. and Nacho and all of them. In the meantime, a couple of comments in the chat. Bob Funk said this was an amazing game. Mighty said Fort Worth pulled off the upset of the season. I would say up to this point, you're probably right, especially with all the momentum Louisiana had after beating Jacksonville last week. Jack's Data had this over-under at 57.5 with 59 points scored. That was solid again. They had Louisiana favored by 10.5. They did not cover. And we lose our first game of the weekend, SFL Nation. We had Louisiana 136-36, so 100 more votes for Louisiana. So Fort Worth showed me, they showed you, and they showed Louisiana. They showed everybody what was up the other day. Moving over to the nightcap that night, the last game on Saturday, Denver at Chicago. Not a lot of people giving Chicago much of a chance, Jeff. And, Denver pretty much took care of business. Chicago had some great plays, especially by Greg Soto. But I think this game was pretty one-sided. Did you see it the same way?
Yeah, it really was kind of one-sided. And you got to go back and look at just in totality of Chicago and the last couple of weeks just trying to figure out this rushing attack. I mean, they cannot seem to get this going for the life of them. They only had 40 rushing yards, and don't get me wrong. I mean, going from Ash Odom to a rookie is tough, but I mean, still, when you got Johnson back there, he's more than capable and has shown bits and flashes throughout the season just what he can do. It just seems like they are just sputtering every which way, and it was a tough situation for the coaching staff to be pushed into. But I mean, I take this as a learning experience. I mean, they're learning firsthand how to game plan and how to do all sorts of stuff, scouting as well. So I mean, it's only going to get better from here. But Chicago they're struggling under 20 minutes of total time of possession compared to Denver with 24. I mean, Denver just wherever you want to look, they were the better team. I mean, both teams were 57% on third down, but I mean, Denver got out to the early lead, and that seemed to do it. I mean, give credit to Chicago; they only held Denver to 3 points in the first quarter. I mean, when you have a defense like that, Chicago has the pieces in place. It just seems like at the wrong time, it's just the little things that are just biting them, and it's spiraling for the rest of the game, and then they can't get back on track. I mean, only 13 points yet again. They their offense is definitely taking a toll downwards. But I mean, give credit to where credit is due for Denver. I mean, you can only play who's on your schedule.
Right.
Some people might say that they've had kind of an easy schedule for this season, but you can only play who's on your schedule once the season kicks off. And Josh Miller doing Josh Miller things. One touchdown pass, one interception. Still looking really good. I mean, look at Jared McChesney. He's doing things just like he picked up a couple seasons ago. I mean, 142 yards. It was just every which way you look. It was just really, really impressive for what Denver did, and it shouldn't have been expected. Denver coming in with that record and moving to 9-1 and just increasing their probability of gaining that first seed in the SFL playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, when you look at some Portland wins this week or this season, Fort Worth a couple times against Louisiana this week and Sioux Falls before, London stealing a couple wins. This really isn't any given Saturday, Sunday, Monday type of league, so anything could have happened, but definitely did not happen in Chicago as Denver really takes care of business, 37-13, which is a total of 50 points. And again, Jack's data with an over-under 56.5. So that actually 56.5 points was the largest spread they had away from the actual points scored. So Jack's data crushing it on Saturday. They had Denver favored by 16.5, so they were in there. And SFL Nation, we took Denver 155-21. I think that was the biggest gap of the day to wrap up Saturday at 3-1. Moving into Sunday games. Wait a minute. First things first, before we get to the Carolina-Houston game, Geraldo Rivera is reporting 9 straight weeks. Harish Watch 2020. Harish has not been injured this season. Ray is 9 weeks in, only a few to go. I'm sorry, 10 weeks, my bad. 10 weeks, a couple weeks to go. And like I said before, hopefully she didn't jinx it, and so he's good during the regular season. He gets hurt in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. But I gotta tell you, Ray called it on my show in the preseason, and Harish is he's living up to the billing. He's 10 weeks with no injuries, and let's see how the next 2 weeks go. All right, moving on to Sunday, to that game in particular that I just mentioned. Carolina at Houston. This was a great game, Thomas. This game had some great plays down the stretch. Nobody was out of it. It went all the way down to the wire. It was just a really great game to watch.
I agree with you. At home just in time to watch the second half of this game, and man, it was exciting to watch. Just the back and forth scoring of the teams. And then just throwing some recognition to your Harish watch there. Harish himself had 5 catches for 102 and a touchdown. He was involved in this game. I just saw a big battle of the running backs in this game. There was a lot of scoring, and most of it was coming from those backs. Logan Jack for Carolina had 15 carries for 161 and a touchdown, along with 19 receptions for 126 yards. So Logan Jack was out there doing it all for Carolina. And then you look on the other side, and you've got Warren Murray, who had just had it there. Sorry. Warren Murray had 28 carries for 269 and 2 touchdowns. So the running backs were out there just carrying these offenses on their back. They weren't the only ones working, though. Sully Richardson had 408 yards passing and 3 touchdowns as well. So Carolina just really had that offense clicking on all cylinders. It just came down to some miscues at the end there. With the big fumble by Logan Jack, which Brody Gulch, possible Rookie of the Year candidate, possible Defensive Player of the Year candidate, returned that for a touchdown. And then Carolina started driving again, down by 7, and then they had that interception there at the end, and it just really put the nail in the coffin for them.
Yeah, it really was an exciting game, and both of them a lot to play for playoff positioning, which, by the way, we will get to in the After Dark portion. Cam is supposed to join us to break down the new playoff positioning in After Dark. This game scored 81 points. Jack's data had at 51.5, but again, like I said on one of the games last week, it's very hard to predict that there's going to be 81 points scored in a game. Houston was favored by 3.5. so they covered that. And looks like we got 2 in a row, SFL Nation. 97-75, we took Houston. So what's that make us? 1, 2, 3. So 4-1 to start the week. I remember last week, I think we went 9-2, if I'm not mistaken, and set a new record. Let's see if that's going to happen this week, if we can tie or break that record. Moving on to the second game on Sunday, which was a heartbreaking game for me personally, Benji. And not a very exciting game to watch, to be honest with you. I expected a lot more points from both teams. Both defenses showed up pretty well, but a heartbreaking loss for Lone Star. Benji, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, it was a tough game for Lone Star for sure. The script was odd in this story. Lone Star jumps out to a 10-zip lead, looking strong on the road. Second quarter, Queen City evens that up. Long pass outside of a long pass to Mr. Curtis there in that first half. Lone Star did a really great job bottling up Queen City. Fast forward to the second half. After the first drive of the second half, which is Lone Star punt rather quickly, Queen City does extend a drive. They're able to kick a field goal, 13-10, and that is the ending of the scoring for this game. The rest of that third quarter and then into the fourth quarter is just trading punts, stout defense, etc. Until we get to the very end of this game. The Queen City's trying to run out the clock, just a little bit under 5 minutes left to go. They're not quite able to do it, although Jet Zero has a good game on the ground. They did feed him a lot today, or on that game. Upwards of almost 30 carries. He had 29 carries on the day. So that just tells you, Queen City loves to throw the ball. So they were being very respectful of that Lone Star defense, but so they decided to hand that ball off to Jet Zero. 29 carries for 107 yards. But wow, let's talk about Cameron Collier there on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
He had a coming out party. He was just bulldozing everyone. The fullback out carries Ike McBride. Let's see. Sorry, I have my junior analyst with me, and he is messing up my notes. Cameron Collier, 26 carries. Ike McBride, 14 carries. 127 yards for Cameron Collier. So he was just a bowling ball. And that dive play up the middle was super effective for Cameron. And the first player couldn't tackle him, so he just had a monster game. And I felt so bad for Lone Star. I was watching the game, watching the chat. Lone Star gets the ball back, a minute 41 to go, just down 3. They're on the 21-yard line. And they come out in a run-heavy formation. They hand the ball off to Cameron Collier for that fullback dive, and then they start to run no huddle. They are trapped in that formation. And I don't know, Coach might have some insight to this. Is there a pass play out of that formation that you guys got stuck in? But they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fullback dives later, they can't convert on a fourth down. They go 19 yards in that last minute and 41 seconds with fullback dives each of those plays. So that was a heartbreaking way to end that game when you had that opportunity to march down the field. But it was a well played defensive game. Both sides of the ball. We see time of possession is the same. One turnover from Lone Star actually kind of did switch some momentum there in that second half. One interception by Ace. But man, that was a frustrating way to end that game. And I think everyone in chat kind of was realizing that as the game was winding down, they got stuck in that. But kudos to Queen City and Lone Star. You guys in the chat displayed some nice sportsmanship there as the clock wound down. That was a bit sad, though. Sad way to end that game.
Yeah, it really was. And I don't know if there's a spike in the game plan, but it seems like we could have spiked the ball at some point to change up the formation too, but I don't know how the AI works exactly. Let's see. Jack's data had the over-under at 48.5. We didn't come anywhere close to that with only 23 points in the game. Lone Star was favored by 7.5. We did not cover. And here's the funny thing. SFL Nation, we picked Lone Star by 1 vote, 86-85 to win that game. So we take the loss on that game heading into the Vancouver at Arizona game, which I have to say, I was surprised by the score, Coach. I thought this was going to be a much closer game.
Well, yeah, you would think so. Going into it, you would think so. until you stop and think about Vancouver and what Vancouver does. Andy likes to push the ball down the field. Don't blame him. He's got Brett Killian. He's got weapons all over the place, right? So it makes a lot of sense. When they hold on to it and they don't have interceptions, this is the kind of thing that can happen. If you look at the stats, Arizona looks pretty good. 381 total yards. Wouldn't complain about that, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at those passing yards for Vancouver, and it's more than their total yards, and you go, oh, crap. And they've still got another 201 they're going to get out of the running game. This is vintage Vancouver when they don't make a mistake. No turnovers. This is why you don't want Vancouver to get in the playoffs if you're somebody going to go up against them. I want to see them get in the playoffs because, hey, I still love Vancouver, but they're going to be scary. When they do this, they're tough. There's just no two ways about it. And Arizona ran into a buzzsaw in this game. And it's not no other way to put it. It just was painful.
Yeah, it really was
painful.
It really was. 620 yards of total offense is insane.
Right.
It's just full on insanity. I don't know if it's the most this season, but I would be willing to bet that it is. If anybody knows for sure, that'd be a nice little stat to find out. We had I think it was 5 of the 6 or 6 of the 7, however many people I had on Thursday night, took Arizona in this game. Only one person picked Vancouver. So I think a lot of people were thinking Arizona at home, had a losing streak going to come out of the funk, and Vancouver just goes in there and takes care of business big time. Jack's data had the over-under at 47.5. They scored 70 points in this game. I mean, Vancouver alone almost scored 50. They had Arizona actually favored by 3, so obviously they did not cover. And SFL Nation, we actually had Arizona too. So the panel had Arizona, Jack's Data had Arizona, SFL Nation had Arizona, and Vancouver wins the game. We had Arizona 113-67, so it wasn't even close. So we take another one on the chin, SFL Nation, and go down, going into the first nightcap game. Charleston at Portland. I had a feeling this was going to be a good game. I had a feeling about Portland, Jeff. And Portland shows up and wins their second game of the season.
I just want to take a moment right now and say, if you really thought that this was going to happen, let me know what the Powerball numbers are going to be for the upcoming draw for the Mega Millions. Because we took another bite on the chin because only 34 people picked Portland.
Yeah,
34 people took Portland, which is, looking here, that's the lowest amount that took a team.
Including, just so you know, all 6 panelists from Thursday took Charleston.
Well, I mean, I people would have probably bet on Charleston as well. But I mean, if you want to talk about, you brought it up at the last game that for the Denver-Chicago game about week to week. This game clearly illustrates the week to week because Portland had nothing to play for, and Charleston did. And this is what happens when you get a team that has nothing to play for, but can, come out and punch people in the mouth. And Truesman did just that for this game, and they took a shot at Charleston, and they swung and they swung and they swung, and they knocked them out after 7 rounds. Both rushing yards, both teams had under 100 rushing yards, which just shows how good these defenses are in the SFL. Outside of that, everything pretty much deadlocked. But then you got to look at the when I always call a game, I always look at the third down conversions, because that's when you know that you're keeping your team on the field, your offense, and you're keeping their defense on the field, and you're winding them down and down and down. 60% on third down for Portland. That is crazy. And probably nobody thought that Portland was going to have a chance in this game. Maybe a slight chance if things went their way. And things went their way. Even though they had 3 turnovers, they turned the ball over 3 times, and they still won the game. It's remarkable. TD Drew, kind of an up and down season this year. Got to try to figure that out. If Charleston is going to push their way into the playoffs, they still have a realistic shot at that. But this definitely takes a blow to that. And when Louisiana plays Portland this week, and you just never know, especially after last week with Fort Worth. They came out, they punched us in the mouth with Williams, and they rode him like the workhorse that he is and that he's shown in the SFL since I've been here, and for the things that I've seen him do in championship games, definitely has that pedigree. So that's going to be something to watch out for. But I mean, this Portland team is just crazy what they can do. It's still trying to figure out Math South. It seems like they cannot get him to work. Probably going to set the record, probably for the lowest QBR in the SFL. But I mean that kind of stinks. But I mean, it happens every so often. You see this. But Truzman it's good to see. He's getting those touches. He's getting 26 carries, and you're seeing what he can do with it. He's also getting work in the passing game. And they have the intricacies to get something going. It's just a matter of time, and everything just sort of went together against Charleston, and they came out on top. I mean, kudos to them, and it's gonna be interesting to see, because you got these teams. You got London, you got Portland. Those are the only teams that are mathematically eliminated,
Right?
And they still have to play teams. And when you play somebody, like I keep saying, when you play somebody who has nothing to play for, and you have a shot at the playoffs, and you're coming in and you're facing these teams that have nothing to play for, that's when we see this in every sort of aspect of team sports. Teams that don't have something to play for are the most dangerous teams, and Portland proved that.
Yep, I completely agree with that. I think Jack's data agreed with Charleston winning the game because they were 10.5-point favorites. The over-under 38.5, and they scored 33, so that was actually really close. Another great prediction by Jack's data. Like you mentioned, only 34 votes for Portland in the Who You Got to 143 for Charleston. So that's a 3-game losing streak for SFL Nation on Saturday, going into the last game of the night, London at St. Louis. Everybody said this was going to be a close game. It was a close game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 6, though, on the panel on Thursday took St. Louis, Thomas, and they were able to squeak out the victory.
I'll tell you what, Dave, both of these teams came into this game with a completely different game plan. Sunday night, London, they got their guys out of the hotel. They sent all 53 guys to that stadium. They sent their equipment staff, their team staff. They sent everybody. And when St. Louis woke up that morning, they said, you know what, we're just sending our kicker to the stadium, and I think that's all we're going to do. Considering Amy Scalise accounted for all 15 of St. Louis's points, it's pretty mind-blowing to think about. That isn't all that happened in this game, though, being completely honest with you. You had Paul Delavu out there for St. Louis that racked up 100 yards on 7 catches. It was just a really good defensive battle down to the wire. The only touchdown scored in the game was scored by Fox Highwind in a kind of end-of-game situation where he just caught a touchdown when the game was going a bit slower. You had Drew Reilly on St. Louis' side of the ball getting 2 interceptions. Your producer, Garrett Winkler, had another interception this week. But overall, there was a combined 8 interceptions from the quarterbacks. It was just a complete defensive battle down to the wire, and St. Louis pulled it out on Amy Scalise's leg, going 5 for 5, had a 52-yarder, and she had all of their points.
Yeah, apparently looking at the graphic, neither team could run the ball at all. 6 rushing yards for London and 37 for St. Louis. That's insane.
Right, yeah, it was just a complete struggle for both offenses.
That's crazy. Well, Jack's data had St. Louis favored by 6.5. They did not cover, and an over-under 53.5. They didn't come anywhere near that. But SFL Nation, we get back on track. 135-40. We took St. Louis, so that puts us at 5-4 going into the Monday night games. So we'll see. We start off 3-1 on Saturday. Not a great Sunday for SFL Nation on the Who You Got. But here's what we called the game of the week, Coach. And this game did not disappoint. What an amazing game by both teams. I don't know if we have a name for this rivalry yet, but I think before the season's end, I'm going to make it my mission to make sure this rivalry has a name. Do you have one, Coach?
Angry Bird seems appropriate to me, but maybe that's too much low-hanging fruit.
Could be.
Take a look halfway down Take a look at that third down conversion rate.
For both teams.
67 and 60%.
Yeah, wow.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I think either one of the teams that they've gone in here and they said, we're going to convert 60% or better of our third downs, we're going to win the game. And somebody had to lose. This was a clash of titans, if you will.
Mhm.
If it weren't for that last second, the excitement of the Louisiana game, Fort Worth game, to me, this is the game of the week. Definitely is the game of the week. Certainly a weightier matter than the other one. But my goodness, this is hey, if the shoe had been on the other foot, it might have been Baltimore kicking the field goal at the end. I will say, you look at the rushing yards, and T-Roy had a great game, but 203 to 75, that tells you quite a bit.
Yeah.
The other numbers are pretty close. Time of possession, pretty close. It's in Sioux Falls' favor, which you would expect. The two top teams in the SFL for turnovers, and Baltimore had 3 turnovers, and Sioux Falls had 2. And that kind of boiled it down right there. That was kind of the difference. That one turnover in a game this close between teams like this, you can't afford to give up too many chances. And they got one more, and they got it done. It was a heck of a game. It was a fun game. And I love that balance. Look at that balance. Sioux Falls, that running, I love that stuff. That is awesome. So very fun. Great weekend of football, and this was part of that whole thing. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about 2 of the top 5 teams, you're really splitting hairs when it comes to what's going to make the difference in a game this close. Jack's data had Baltimore favored by 6.5, so they did not cover. Over under 64.5. They were kind of low on that with only 37. And SFL Nation, we're just not doing well. We took Baltimore 120 to 64. So it's not looking good. We are now 5-5 for the week with 1 game to go. Let's see if we can at least get over 500 going into the crowd play game of the week. Jacksonville at Florida, the Battle of I-95. I think everybody expected this to be a really close game, Benji, even though a lot of people picked Jacksonville, but I think a lot of people thought since it was a rivalry game, it would be close, and it went the other way. Florida took care of business. How did that go? How did that happen, Benji?
Yeah, just in time for the playoffs. Here comes Florida.
Yep.
They played a masterful game. First half was really tight. JW Dumpster Fire Doyle got out to a fast start. 7-0. Florida led early, and then a nice drive to open the game. Trading scores a little bit. Jacksonville does recapture the lead 10-7 before Florida, just before the half, goes in up 14-10 on a touchdown pass to the tight end. Zarkov. Hashtag throw it to the tight end. Second half, things didn't go as planned for Jacksonville. They did kick a field goal to pull within 1, 14-13, but then Florida scores 3 unanswered touchdowns. Quarterback Ron Cochran starts airing the ball out. Some deep touchdown passes to Bush and Como make it 28-13, and then Jacksonville gets the ball back. Second half, they put a good drive together. They are deep in Florida territory, and then Christensen throws an interception. Evan Carroll picks it off and returns an 84-yard interception for a touchdown. So that's that third score in a row for Florida. At that point, it's 35-13, and that's basically all she wrote for Jacksonville at that point. They were able to put another score on the board, and then Florida finishes out with a field goal. But that second half just belonged to Florida, and Jacksonville just couldn't catch up. Even we see the time of possession there, 26 minutes in the first half. Jacksonville was, I would say, right on schedule. They were running the ball, playing well. It's just, I don't know really how to describe what happened in the second half, except just Florida took off. They just show that they're a pretty dangerous team playing at home. Who wants to play Florida in the playoffs? Raise your hand. It's going to be one of those types of deals, So they played just really well. Ron Cochran, player of the game. He's had a few whoopsie games this season where he threw a bunch of interceptions, but played really well. All in all, was a player of the game and really led the charge for Florida. They looked good last night.
Yeah, he's had some really good games too earlier in the season too.
Yeah.
And I think against us, he I think he won Diva of the Week, if I'm not mistaken, when he played against Lone Star with that overtime victory. So Ron, yeah, he's been up and down a little bit, but it seems like all of Florida's hitting their stride just in time, like you mentioned at the beginning. Let's see. Jack's data. Wow, this is really good. 57.5 on the over-under in a game that scored 58 points. That's amazing. This game was a pick'em, so didn't get that. And then SFL Nation, we should just stop picking sometimes, I think. We took Jacksonville 105-76 to go 5-6 for the weekend, for week 10. It's only the second time that we have gone under 500. The last time was week 5, so every 5 weeks, I guess. So maybe, would that be the second round of the playoffs or maybe the semifinals? Might be the next time 5 weeks out. I don't know. Not looking good. Gunny, how you doing? You hanging with us? Are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to go.
All right, you can start whenever you're ready.
Good evening, SFL Nation. Tonight, Gunny celebrates the women of the SFL. We have 11 teams with 12 players that are women in the league. Also, there are 3 upcoming women that are sitting, waiting in our minor leagues, waiting to come up to the big leagues. Those names are Laura Harrell, Mexico City, KT Harrell, Mexico City, Kendra Hall, Atlanta, Ike McBride, Lone Star Glory, Tina Begin, Houston, Ashley Rose Finch, Vancouver, Amy Shalizzi, St. Louis, Catherine Harrell, Fort Worth, Thomasina Raymond, Las Vegas, Amanda Moyer, Charleston, Ashley Jackson, Arizona. Carolina has Rachel Colston. The 3 that are in the minor leagues are Lauren Percoco, she will be a tight end, Brooke Bessel, she will be a running back, and Kelsey Brown, which will be a wide receiver. Also, coming up this next week, between 5th through 19th place at 6-4 records through 4-6 records, there are 15 teams within 2 games of each other fighting for the playoffs for these last 2 weeks.
Wow.
And with that, that is all.
Wow, that's a lot of teams, Gunny. Thank you again for your pearls of wisdom, as always. Moving on to Diva of the Week for Week 10. I have a couple guys that I'm waiting on to see if they're I'm gonna push them to the back to see if Frank. I know Frank, I saw you in the chat. I'm not sure if you're able to get in here or not. I have your pick if you're ready. If not, and then I think Winkler, if you can do Eagles maybe, since he had to go take care of the baby, and then we'll be straight. So let me start with Benji. Benji, who is your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
Mr. Xander Gold. I think his touchdown drive, not only when his team needed a victory to stay in the playoff race, but they were on the road against the number 1 team in the league. And when they needed a perfect drive with the season on the line, I mean, cards stacked against them, Xander Gold delivered with a masterful drive leading his squad down the road. I think 8 of 13, 78 yards. See, my junior analyst is agreeing here with me. He played a wonderful game. Fort Worth, they're giant killers. On another team, no one wants to play in the playoffs. So I think Xander Gold in that last drive of the game, he gets my vote for Diva of the Week.
Nice. All right. Coach, moving on to you next. Who is your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
I have another player who came up clutch. Miracle Montague of Mexico City. Only had 4 receptions for 70 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, including the go-ahead touchdown. That's a diva for you right there. Showed up right when he was needed.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, Coach, good job. Let's see. Jeff, let's go on to you. Jeff, who is your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
Well, I am going to go all the way to St. Louis, Missouri, and give my Diva of the Week to Drew Reilly. Began with a couple of interceptions in the game, really turned the tide, kind of seized the momentum from London earlier in the matchup, kind of showed off exactly what he was doing this season, with his 6th interception, and then also continuing from where he left off last season. Definitely one of the cornerbacks that you do not want to pick on. McLean tried to pick on him a couple times and kind of nipped him in the butt, so it came back to haunt him as well. So I got to go with Drew Really.
Got it. I think he's been nominated 2 or 3 times this season already, and I think he won once, so he's crushing it this season. All right, moving on to Thomas. Thomas, who is your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
Well, my Diva of the Week this week is going to be somebody that managed to beat a team by themselves. It's going to be Amy Scalise, the kicker for St. Louis. She pulled out that strong leg, let the hair down, and she showed London what she had, and she put up 15 points on them, and she's my Diva of the Week.
Nice. Okay. Gunny, are you ready with your Diva of the Week nominee? And if you are, who is your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
Gunny's Week 10 nominee is none other than the broadcaster of the Lone Star Glory Queen City game, which I called Stephen Hacker, but it was Robert Gary Jr., which also had the game-scoring touchdown to upset the game of the week.
Wow. Yeah, he had a heck of a game, and he won that with like 7 seconds left. So,
yes, sir.
You can't get much more diva than that. All right, Gunny, got it down. Frank, I see that you're in here now, so why don't you give us your Week 10 Diva of the Week nominee?
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we're good to go.
Hey, I've been making a plug for this guy all year long. I think he's going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. A scoop and score against Carolina, taking them out. He only had 3 solo tackles, 3 assists, 1 pass defense. With the fumble recovery for a touchdown, I'm going with Brody Goats from Houston.
Nice call. That's a great highlight. Watching him scoop that fumble up for a touchdown. Okay, I'm gonna do mine, and then I'm gonna wing Eagle since he had to go. My Diva of the Week nominee for Week 10 is none other than the Cuban Missile himself, Greg Soto. He had 2 touchdowns in a loss to Denver, but he had so many one-handed catches, including one of his touchdowns was a one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. He also had a touchdown-saving tackle off an interception for Denver. He chased the receiver down 81 yards to tackle him, and he had 8 receptions for 99 yards and those 2 touchdowns. So between the one-handed catches, the touchdowns, the running the interceptor down and getting him, Greg Soto is my Diva of the Week nominee for Week 10. Now, I believe Eagle is not here, so here's what I think. I think his Week 10 nominee, I believe he said it was Jeffrey Daggs, and I don't have the information in front of me, so I just pulled it up. Jeffrey Daggs, free safety for Mexico City, 3 tackles, 3 assists, 1 pass deflection, but he had 2 interceptions, and he had 3 punt returns, and I'm looking to see if anybody knows. Did he have a punt return for a touchdown? I don't think so, but he had quite the game with 2 interceptions as well, just like Drew really did. So if that changes, or if that's not his nominee, we will update it in the poll when we put it on the Access Live server later tonight. So those are your Diva of the Week nominees this week. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 of them. I think that might be a new record. So don't forget to go and vote for who you think deserves to be the Week 10 Diva of the Week. We're kind of ahead schedule. I'm not used to being so far ahead schedule. We're about 5 minutes ahead, but we're going to move to the After Dark portion anyway. Like I mentioned before, our beloved SFL commissioner, Cameron Irvine, is in the house to join us to break down the playoffs. Cam, what's going on? How you doing tonight?
Look at all these beautiful people out there.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's just, when did everybody get so attractive?
I think when I came in the league.
It can't be.
It is. They started taking beauty tips from me, diva tips. That's how it works, bro.
I missed the boat. I had a chance to invest and I blew it.
You missed it. That ship has sailed now, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
Now I'm the only gross one here. Dang it.
Don't worry about it. We'll bring some new people in, and they can hang out with you. Don't sweat it.
Okay.
All right.
Whew.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Real quick, if you're looking at your screens, we're not going to have Cam go into all this again, but playoff tiebreakers in order of importance. Obviously, head-to-head first. Common game, strength of victory, strength of schedule. We rarely get into the point differential and top wins. So, and I'm curious about the head-to-head, Cam. I've actually got a couple questions for you on the head-to-heads, unless I'm assuming maybe three teams didn't have common opponents maybe or something. But so that's the breakdown on the tiebreakers. Let's take a look at your top five. We had some movement. Louisiana and Denver switch spots. Baltimore and Sioux Falls switch spots. And Jacksonville hanging on with the same record as a couple teams behind them in that fifth spot at 6-4. Can you break this down for us, Cam?
Yeah, the real interesting one this week was Louisiana Sioux Falls. At the time that that the Baltimore Sioux Falls game was wrapping up, strength of victory was well in hand. But after the Florida win over Jacksonville, remember Louisiana beat Jacksonville,
right?
So their strength of victory got worse. And then they ended up in a tie there. Their common games, an unusual tie. 5 common opponents, the same record.
Wow.
Against those 5 common opponents. So then we had to go to strength of schedule. That was even close. And remember, as the season goes along, depending upon who wins and who loses, affects these strength of schedule and strength of victory numbers. So the fact that they are so close right now means that it would be almost impossible to know if they finished with the same record in week 12, who would end up getting that better seed. And it's possible that they could have more common opponents down the road. It's just a quick look on that. Sioux Falls has Arizona and St. Louis left. Louisiana did play St. Louis, so that would become a common opponent. And they beat St. Louis, by the way. And then Florida and Portland left on Louisiana's schedule, and neither of those teams did Sioux Falls play. So that St. Louis game in week 12 with Sioux Falls, if they lose that game, could be a deciding factor. You never know. But in the tiebreaker between those two teams.
Right. Okay. And then looking in the bottom half, so Lone Star falls from 6-10 after a 3-point loss to Queen City. Florida jumps. I think did they jump from 10-6? I think they might have, or 8-6. Mexico City holds at 7. Vancouver comes out of nowhere. I don't even know where they were last week, but they jump all the way up to number 8.
Yeah, they were out.
Yeah, Houston jumps from 12-9. Fort Worth shows up out of nowhere to grab that 13th spot, and Arizona and Charleston drop out. The only 2 teams to hold were Mexico City and Atlanta 7-11. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just Vancouver out of nowhere, all the way up to 8. Lone Star drops from 6-10. So, how did this break down with these 5-5 teams?
Yeah, it was interesting, and the 6-4s are a very unattractive story. They just no common games or not enough common games. Not a lot of head-to-head. I was talking to Ramos last night during a commercial break, and I said, "Did you play Florida this year?" He said, "No." I said, "That has to be the first time ever." And I said, "Did you play Jacksonville this year?" And he said, "No, I didn't." And I said, "Well, that's why you're 6-4." And we kind of had a chuckle about it. But yeah, weird schedule for Mexico City, and strength of victory ends up for the meantime hurting them. But those 3 teams, again, strength of victory is pretty close. But the 5-5, pretty crazy. St. Louis on the outside looking in right now because they simply just have not beaten a lot of great teams, despite having a nice season at 5-5. They beat Mexico City, but the Aztecs have been on a slide. They did pull it out against Tulsa, but had lost 2 straight previously, so that's been kind of hurting them. Then their other wins, Tulsa on a slide, Queen City is 4-6, and Las Vegas 4-6, London as well. So they do not have a win, or they have 1 win, the Mexico City game against a team above 500. They do have Houston this week, Sioux Falls in week 12. So St. Louis has time to bolster that strength of victory all on their own without their teams that they've beaten getting wins themselves. Atlanta's in the same boat. You got a 4-way tie. There's just not enough common opponents, at least at this point in the season. Usually common opponents, when you have a 3-way tie, by the end of the season, you can usually get it done. Right now, week 10, especially with 4 teams, still a little rocky. Atlanta's strength of victory hurts them and slots them still remaining in 11th. And it's tough for Atlanta. They've got Chicago and Queen City left, 2 teams that are sub 500. So they're going to need some teams they've beaten to kind of pick up some more wins. Atlanta's the biggest Baltimore fan right now. They're the biggest London fan right now, Tulsa fan right now, teams that are not really in jeopardy of taking Atlanta's spot, but could pick up some wins for them. After that, 3-way tie at 5-5. Unfortunately for Lone Star, head-to-head does come into play.
Yeah.
Those 3 teams left, 2 losses to each of them. It doesn't matter that Vancouver or Houston has not swept the other direction. All that matters is a head-to-head sweep, either win or loss. So Lone Star gets swept by both of the remaining teams. That slots them 10th. And then Vancouver and Houston with a whopping 7 common opponents.
Wow.
Vancouver 4-3 in those games, Houston 2-5. And that wraps that up. Interestingly enough, Dave, right,
Yeah.
if Vancouver is not tied with Houston or Lone Star, maybe they don't surge as far up to 8th. But
Right.
because those were the teams kind of left in the pile, Vancouver for the moment at 8th. And it, sometimes it's all about who's left in the pile.
Yeah, I'm looking at is it St. Louis's strength of victory is 0.380 and Atlanta's is only 400. So that's like minuscule between 12 and 11.
Yeah, not good, especially when considering all of the 4 and 6 teams behind them. Listen to these strength of victories: 4 and 6. Fort Worth 625, Queen City 525, Charleston 500,
wow.
Arizona 500. I mean, these are not terrible strength of victory.
No,
these are
with
like
one more
the best-
victory, you're talking
some of
Atlanta and St. Louis probably being out.
Exactly. Some of the best strength of victories in the league. So if you look at week 11, if Atlanta or St. Louis slip up, there's a lot of 4 and 6 teams that could be right in the thick of it or even above that red cut line heading into week 12. So St. Louis and Atlanta really got to be careful because in a log jam at the bottom, that's going to be a deciding factor if it gets tight, dicey.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said there's 7 teams at 4 and 6, 13th
Right.
through 19th. If you have questions for Cam or anybody in the panel or comments about the playoffs, at Winkler or at me in the chat, and let me know. I'm going to go to the panel for a second. Benji, I think we're all pretty familiar with. Let me switch this real quick. With these top 5, these same top 5 have been on every week since the playoff picture came out. What I want to ask you is about the bottom half. Any teams stick out to you there that you think will not be there come playoff time? Oh, Benji's muted. Okay,
Well,
yeah.
no, you put me on the spot there.
Sorry, bro. Wait, that's what I do. Hey, that's why it's unfiltered, bro. I know, unedited.
That's really interesting what Cam said about Atlanta and needing some help, even sitting there at number 11. When the odds play out, is a deck stacked against them, missing the playoffs, even if they, perform well here at the end of the season. Lone Star's loss really hurts them, but they're still playing really strong. The teams that made big moves up, Houston, Vancouver, Florida, playing really well. I don't know if I can pick a team that's going to not be there in that bottom half. I think maybe a team like Vancouver who made such a big jump up, or Houston who's playing well now at 5-5. If they have a bad game, they slip up. But I still feel like maybe Lone Star, maybe even Atlanta, slip in and make the playoffs.
Yeah. Before I get to Coach Cam, do you happen to know who Vancouver plays their last 2 games?
Yeah,
Have
they
that in
got
front of you?
Carolina. They have Carolina and Houston, a 4 and 6 and a 5 and 5 team. That Houston game in Week 12 could decide
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting.
That's huge. Coach, what stands out to you between 6 and 13, and do you see any teams that you think may not actually be in the playoff picture come playoff time?
Well, of those, it looks to me like Atlanta's got the worst situation because of having to rely on so many other people. And you know, and I believe they said they need Tulsa to beat us. Yeah, well, sorry, your season is over because I'm not going to make the same mistake I made last week. Anyway, um, yeah, it just Atlanta's got the most. They've got the least control over their situation, and so unfortunately, they look like the team that's in the most precarious situation to me. You know,
Yeah.
could be wrong. It's Atlanta. They pull out a couple of wins and a couple of other things go the. You know, if they win out, they've done their part. They've done everything they can. So
Yeah, as I'm looking at this too. So Cam just said Vancouver and Houston play in week 12. Lone Star's already played
Mhm.
all four of those teams 6, 7, 8, and 9, and we've gone 1 and 3. Lost to
yeah,
Florida in overtime, beat Mexico City, got crushed by both Vancouver and Houston.
yeah.
Cam, there's a question in the chat. If offhand you have Vancouver, Houston, and Lone Star's strength of victory, how close are those three on strength of victory?
Yeah, and just before that, quickly, Atlanta's in a sticky situation if they lose, but they have Chicago and Queen City remaining. If they win out, they're fine. 7-5 will get them in. They shouldn't have much of a problem. It's just if they lose, you've got other 4 and 6 teams with better strength of victories that could bury them in a 6-6 situation. That's what I was saying in terms of Atlanta being sticky. But in terms of the strength of victories for Vancouver, it's 420. For Houston, it's 420. And what was Lone Star? Was Lone Star the third
Yeah,
team?
the third team, yeah.
460. So all incredibly close.
Mm-hmm.
That could, I mean, with 2 weeks left, remember that's 22 different results that could play out differently, right? So if you're within 100 points, I was even looking at Tulsa, for example. Tulsa's strength of victory in a wild and crazy scenario at 3-7 if they were to win out. Right now, it's a measly 333. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the worst strength of victory in the league. But if Tulsa, let's say they win out, sorry, coach, just hypothesizing here. If they beat Denver, just Denver, their strength of victory goes to 475
Wow.
because Denver is the number one
Right.
team in the league. So if Tulsa is anywhere in the mix down the stretch, they could have a little tiny chance if they beat Denver, because this is the time of the year that you want the number one team on your schedule because it can keep you alive, at least give you a heartbeat in tiebreaker situations. And in the case of Atlanta, they just don't have a powerhouse team remaining on their schedule. So a lot of it, if they lose, is kind of out of their hands.
Right. And right before I get to Frank, I'm going to ask Frank the same question I asked Coach and Benji. Jeremy put in the chat, best part about being number one is you're not in the cluster mess. Worst part is Dave Axis and his ragtag crew never talk about you. Don't worry about it, Jeremy. We'll talk about the top five in a minute. We're going to talk about which of you five are going to drop down into the 6 through 13 crowd after I get through this bottom part first with Frank. Frank, as you look at this 6 through 13, what stands out to you, and are any of these teams you think not going to be there come playoff time?
Well, all I know is after the 12th week, Cam's calculator is going to be smoking trying to figure all this out. I know for us, Vegas, we've got to win the next two, and it's going to be difficult with Denver coming in. Fortunately, they are playing us at home, and I think we got a pretty good team. We got a young offense and a strong defense, but it looks difficult for us. I was thinking Atlanta was going to be able to win the next two and be able to get in, because I mean you got a team like Vancouver that was not even in top 11, now all of a sudden is.
Yeah.
After one victory. So Cam's got his formula and all that stuff, and wacky things have happened in this league this year, and there's so many clustered up. It's anybody's game to me that can still sneak in.
Well, and there's so much movement to be had. I mean, just even looking at Lone Star this week, dropping 4 spots, and Vancouver jumping. Cam, what did you say Vancouver was last week? 14, 15?
They were 14, I think, 14 or
Yeah,
15.
so they jumped 6 spots up. That's crazy. Gunny, what about
Not to
you?
take any,
I'm sorry,
not
go
to
ahead,
take
Frank.
anything away from the teams that you're playing, Dave, but I think Lone Star has got the better chance of of moving up.
Well, the best thing for Lone Star is that Vancouver and Houston have to play each other, to be honest with
Right.
you. And the fact
Correct.
that we have a head-to-head with Mexico City if we tie with them. So, Gunny, how you feeling about this 6 through 13? Any teams in here you think will not be there come playoff time, or what? Something else that stands out to you?
Well, I agree that I believe it takes 7 wins to definitely get to the playoffs. But just this weekend alone, you have 6 games where you're in the playoff contention with Carolina at Vancouver, Florida at Charleston, Jacksonville at Fort Worth, St. Louis at Houston, Tulsa at Lone Star, and Queen City at Mexico City. All of them are still in the playoff hunt. So it's still going to be a wonderful week 11 to see Cam's shuffleboard next weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be an extremely stressful week 11 and 12 for the rest of us. Jeff, before I get to you, AJ Levy, he said it twice. Cam, did you say that Sioux Falls did not play Portland? Did you say? I didn't hear you say that, but he seems to think you said it and wanted to let you know they did play in week 1.
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't mention it, and I did forget about it, but because Louisiana has played Portland already. Yes, that was my mistake. They play them twice, and I missed the first meeting. They also play this week.
Okay.
So Louisiana did play Portland earlier. That's my mistake in week 5. That is part of the 4-1 common opponents already. That's why this week's Portland game only matters for record purposes. So interesting point though made by Levy is that if Louisiana beats Portland this week, they are now 5-1 against Sioux Falls common opponents. Sioux Falls is 4-1, and Louisiana would get the edge. Getting Portland twice on their schedule ended up being a benefit to Louisiana. But again, that St. Louis game can also factor into the schedules late. Right now, they are both 4-1. An extra Portland game and St. Louis becoming a common opponent will ultimately break that tie if it comes to that down the stretch.
Gotcha. All right, Jeff, same question to you. 6 through 13, anything stand out, and do you think any of these teams will not be there come playoff time?
6 through 13. You know what? I think St. Louis has a tough stretch coming up. They just had their last home game, and I think, or it was one of the games I've broadcasted so many games that you lose track of all the notes that you take and whatnot. I do think St. Louis, they haven't had the offense to keep up with some of the other teams. They had a couple of tough losses, even at home and even on the road. So I think it's going to be hard for them. I know right now they're on the outside looking into the playoffs, but I just think that they're going to be one of those teams that is not going to find its way out. Another team that, might not be there. Yeah, geez. I mean, with all those teams at 5-5, it's like pick your poison, right?
Right.
Vancouver, they could turn it on and they could go on a run. Man, I mean, even the Florida, they're looking lights out, and what they can do in the playoffs. I know everybody's like, "Oh yeah, let Florida lose, so we don't have to play them." Every team is saying, "Don't have Florida in the playoffs," because Mighty is just cooking stuff up in his little pot right now, putting different ingredients into it and seeing what comes out, and it's probably going to come up with another championship ring. Even New Mexico, it's just really, really, really tough, and I'm so lucky that I'm not in Cam's spot to have to do all this. I think it's just going to stay how it is. I'm not gonna give anybody's bulletin board material. I just think it's gonna stay as is.
Okay. So if you look at Mexico City, strength of victory is 400. Florida 417. Jacksonville 467. Is that a wider gap than I think it is, Cam, or is that pretty solid for Jacksonville?
No, it's actually not too wide at all. Like I was saying, with 22 different possibilities still left to be determined, if you're within 100 from somebody, you have the ability to kind of catch them. Now that will become a little clearer after week 11. If that gap is greater than maybe 50, right? Then it's going to be hard to make up, and you would need like 8 different things to go your way, right? But for now, that's still catchable. And if I'm Jacksonville, I'm feeling very fortunate waking up from 2 tough losses against Florida and Louisiana that they're still sitting in 5th with a bye. So
Jacksonville has Fort Worth on the road, Charleston at home. Doyle asked in the chat how we feel about Florida's chances of getting into the 3 or 4 slot. I'm going to change that question up for everybody and ask, what do you think Florida's chances are jumping into the top 5? And so remember, Jacksonville, I just said, has Charleston and what did I say? Where is it? And they're on the road. And they're on the road at Fort Worth. Florida is on the road to Charleston, so they both play Charleston, and then they host Louisiana. So I think Florida actually has the tougher schedule. And if you want to throw in one more and log on that fire, let's look at the other 6-4 team, Mexico City. They host Queen City in week 11, and then they go to where'd it go? And they host Vegas. So Mexico City has 2 home games, Queen City and Vegas. So Benji, starting with you, based on the schedules that I just said, do you think Jacksonville will hold at 5, or do you think Mexico City or Florida will jump into the top 5 and knock Jacksonville out?
I am going to say I think Jacksonville stands pat.
Okay. Coach, what about you?
You talk about all those schedules. My brain went to mush.
I think Florida has the tougher schedule. Mexico City has 2 home games. Both Jacksonville and Florida play Charleston, but Florida also has to play Louisiana. Florida has to play Louisiana.
Yeah. I'd say Jacksonville stays there.
Okay. Gunny, what do you think?
I believe with the Florida schedule, Jacksonville will stay where they are.
Okay, you don't think Mexico City can move up?
They're going to win at least one of those games at home, and they're going to get the 7-5 record. Not real sure what their strength of schedule will be to move up that far up.
Okay, Jeff, what about you?
I think Florida will pass them.
You think Florida, with the toughest schedule of the 3 teams, supposedly, will pass Jacksonville?
Because I think that last week against us, I've been saying it all along, I do think that we're going to lose to Florida.
Okay, and you play at Florida in week 12.
Yeah. It's all about, for me, it's all about how the home games fell. And the home games fell for us in the earlier portion of the season. We caught we caught some teams off guard, and now Florida. It would have been better if we would have played them in the earlier portion of the schedule, but ever since like week 4, they've turned things around and they are looking really good. And I think that they'll come out guns a-blazing, especially if they have a chance to jump a couple spots, because maybe they'll take care of business this week. And if they are going into the last week and they have something to prove, I think Mighty is going to do everything they can to get that next spot.
Okay. This is the portion of the show where we talk about Jeremy Vega's Denver Nightwings, the number 1 seed at 9-1.
Do we have to?
I gotta run.
Everybody, and that's the show, folks. Here's Denver.
And that's all, folks.
Right, exactly. So here's the thing, though. this coming up week 11, Denver plays at Vegas. Okay, number one, it's Vice Wars. Number two, Vegas has what I think is the best home field advantage in all the SFL. And then I think Cam, did you say they played Tulsa in week 12? I think you did.
They do, yes.
Yeah, they do. So let me ask the panel again, and then Cam, I'm going to wrap up with you. Is Denver going to go 11-1, 10-2, or 9-3, Benji?
I'm gonna 11-1.
11-1. Okay, Coach, what about you?
I'm going to give some love to my boys in Vegas and say they're going to go 10-2.
There you go. Attaboy, Coach. Gunny, what do you think?
I'm thinking the same thing. 10-2.
10-2. Do you think that loss is going to be at Vegas or against Tulsa?
At Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Okay. Jeff? Jeff? You're muted. Jeff won't unmute himself for some reason. There you go.
There we go. I mean, yeah, Rona situation there, right?
There you
Can't
go.
Unmute yourself. For my sake, I still want us to claim the number one spot, so I hope they lose the 2 games, and then then Louisiana, we don't have to. No, we would still have to worry about the Florida game. I'm worried about Florida if you can't tell.
Yeah, I can tell.
But
well, they've won what, 5 in a row, I think now.
yeah, and being there a season, I know how mighty works. So I mean, I've been inside of it, so it stunk that the only time I was there was when we didn't get a chance to go into the playoffs. But that's the thing that's making Mighty do this, is because he didn't make the playoffs last season,
Right.
and now he's just taking it out on teams left and right. I think that Denver is going to go 11-1.
Okay. Cam, what do you think? You think Vegas has a chance in Vice Wars at home in week 11?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be there, and I think that the most impressive victory for Vegas this season was the Florida game. They're the only team to beat Florida since Florida started 0-3. And they did not just beat Florida, they crushed Florida. And that was the Scott Johnson game where he
right.
went crazy. And Max Paul said later on that week that he just got outcoached, and Vegas just outcoached him. So if Vegas can outcoach the 3-time champ, Vegas can outcoach the 1-time champ. So that is the shot that I give Vegas, and I'm interested to see. Plus, they're rivals. They know each other. They've been in each other's head. And Denver blew out Vegas earlier this season. Well, Jacksonville blew out Florida earlier this season. And in the second meeting, they got blown out themselves in the second half. So those are the couple of chances I give Vegas. Now, that's not to say that Denver is not on fire right now. But Vegas has shown that they can coach with the best of them. And if their game plan is a bullseye, that they can win. So that's why Ramos and I will be there. That's why Crowd Play will be there. And, Vice Wars, it doesn't get much better. Love the crazy uniforms and all that. And it'll be interesting. The Tulsa game, too, it's sneaky just because Tulsa doesn't make any game pretty. Their D-line is so good. I love watching Tulsa's defense. It's one of my favorite defenses to watch in the league. Their offense is kind of hit and miss, and that's been their Achilles heel, but that defensive front is mean.
Yeah.
Majesty at linebacker, Real at linebacker, they are mean. And if they put them in the right position to stop McChesney, the game could get ugly. You just never really know. But I probably give the bigger edge to Vegas in trying to pull the upset, and they're trying to save their season too. So
right,
never count out. What's the phrase? I don't remember the phrase, but you never count out somebody that's desperate. And Queen City was desperate this week. Fort Worth was desperate this week.
Yeah,
Portland. And they both pulled out huge wins. Portland was
playing for pride, if nothing else.
Yeah, but they want to see, or they want to prove a point too. So lots of who you got struggle because the The community sometimes can get a little sheepish and just go with a bunch of favorites.
Yep.
And that's what happened this week. A lot of upsets around the league. So
let me ask you one last question, then we're going to wrap this up. I want to ask you the question I asked the panel about Mexico City, Florida, and Jacksonville. Knowing the schedules that I mentioned, Florida having the toughest, Mexico City having 2 games at home. You think this top 5 is going to stay the way it is, or do you think Jacksonville might drop out and one of those 2 teams move in?
Jacksonville's crazy. They lost 2 games in a row bad earlier in the year, and then they won a bunch, and now they've lost 2 games in a row, and they weren't pretty in the second half, and now here they are. How are they going to respond? So they've been kind of fascinating because they've shown they can be impenetrable, and then they've also shown to just kind of fall apart in spots.
And they have to travel to Fort Worth this week, and Fort Worth riding high on that victory over Louisiana.
I think because they've already beaten Charleston this year, and that was a pretty impressive win, and that was in Charleston. And so I think if they can get over the Fort Worth hump, I think Jacksonville will be okay. But if Fort Worth gives them a bunch of problems, things could get tricky. Mexico City's up and down. They almost lost their 3rd in a row. That would have been devastating if they would have ended up not being able to pull that out. So Florida of the 3, definitely the hottest, most consistent. Chalk up their 1 loss to just getting out coached and their opponent having a better game plan that day. But the Storm are rolling. I'm kind of with Jeff there. Not to say that I think Florida's going to win or anything, but if I'm Louisiana, I'm concerned. Down late in the season, especially trying to ward off Sioux Falls and Baltimore and trying to keep that pretty nice playoff position. So it's going to be wild down the stretch. I think in week 12 we were putting together the week 12 schedule, and I think we're going to have 6 of the 11 games on the Saturday. That's Saturday of week 12. And we'll do that to try to get as many games out of the way as possible, so that we can play out all the scenarios for Sunday and Monday so that we know, hey, if this team loses, this team's out of the playoffs, right? And we know every kind of scenario. And me and Gerald Giudice and a couple others, I can't remember the panel, but we all get together and they make sure that I'm not missing anything when I run through all of those scenarios in week 12. But you'll see 3 TV games on Sunday, 2 on Monday to wrap up the schedule. And I would imagine Vancouver, Houston is going to be one of those last 5. Louisiana, Florida is going to be one of those last 5. Potentially, depending upon how this week goes, Jacksonville, Charleston, if that's a 6-5, 5-6 game, for whatever reason, that could be a down the stretch game as well. So a lot of enticing matchups that I can't wait to see play out.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. That does it for your Week 10 recaps and your Week 10 playoff picture going into Week 11. I want to thank Thomas Smith, Coach, Benji, Jeff. Frank popped in for a few. Gunny, always. Cam, thanks for coming in and breaking this down for us. Appreciate that. Thank you to all the listeners. Thanks for hanging in there with us, going the extra half hour, but it definitely was worth it. So thanks again. I will see you on Thursday night, 9 p.m. on Twitch, going head-to-head with the NFL once again. So in the meantime, have a glorious night, and I will see you at the tees.